You know, putting this all together, I think that electronic music has a little bit of a problem, because I think a lot of people that come, like myself, come from playing in bands. I played in doom metal bands and industrial bands and metal bands, and we like to be physical with our instruments. Nobody wants to sit up there and keep their hands in at their side. You know, you work at a computer all day. You don't want to do that when you're on stage. And so I had this problem, is like, how do I stand there with a guitar and press buttons and have this sequence running? And I just happened to be in art school and building sculpture at the same time, and I said, I wonder if I could make a sculpture, or basically a large instrument that would control pitch. And I made a large pitch controller with a lever, almost like you're on an airplane. It's got the throttle. I called it the throttles. It controlled the pitch. It was really simple. And from there, I pretty much just said, hey, what other ways can I control every aspect of the sound manually, live? You know, if I'm not touching something, you're not hearing something. And from there, I just started building all these instruments, very physical.
To move again.
All right, so basically this is a new setup, and at Moogfest this was the very first performance on this set of instruments. Other than the microphone and the throat mic, everything that is here is something that I've created in the last year. Same idea. I've got a rhythm controller that I play with my right hand. This is the third revision of this. It was a linear actuator, then there was one called Rails, and then this one's called Gridiron, because it uses basically a grid of different textures. It's got 8 buttons on it. It's got a grid of different textures and a stylus that basically can ride over different grooves, and has an encoder that will trigger those positions. So it's almost like when you drag your hand against a fence that has rings on it, and you just anything that you would feel the textures, you can make rhythms out of those textures. So I've machined different textures in different strips here, so I can, through my set, I can experiment with different textures. I'll get into a little bit more about that later, but that's the general idea. This instrument is the second revision. It's a pitch controller, and basically what that is just takes a synthesizer or a software synth, and I change the pitch. A lot of times keyboards have fixed positions and fixed tones, so you're stuck with an octave with fixed notes. I wanted to be able to, almost like a fretless bass, go in between the pitches, but for electronic music. A lot of times you got a little pitch bend, but you're not going to be playing that very accurately. But this one I can go. So that's something that I feel is pretty valuable to, especially making heavy music, is finding those places in between and crossing over pitches. So the combination of these two things together, right hand, left hand, basically I don't have to play to a MIDI click or anything. I can, but I can basically kind of create the rhythm in the tempo on my own. I'm not stuck within 16 beats on a normal drum machine. So for me, that was the whole idea of why I built these instruments, is so I could get out of MIDI land and out of these like fixed tempos. So I'll go through this a little bit more, and then I can talk about kind of how I got here. I've built several versions of big knobs. They're just big knobs. They're smaller than small knobs. You do a lot of knob twiddling, and I basically wanted something that was not this, that basically had weight. This is a solid piece of aluminum. It's got like inertia. I can really feel that, and so it takes a little bit of force to stop it from spinning. Keep spinning forever. So basically for this, I can map these 3 knobs to any parameter in software that I want. And I've got a filter hooked up to this one, which goes from low to high frequencies. So here's the audio clip clean. This is a delay, so I can just make it all like, you know, have a very long, I don't have to play it, it'll just keep repeating. So. So there's the clip. You can hear the clip. I believe this is from, I don't want to tell what it's from, but it's from some classical music, some vocal part. So I can go. And then I can just turn the filter over and just make it warble bass. So just with these things being larger, you know, I think if these were small knobs, you wouldn't be able to let that play and just keep spinning like that. So, you know, you have good ball bearings in there and things like that. It allows you to like use the instrument more as an instrument like you would a guitar. You know, a little knob like this, you can't do that kind of thing. And lastly, this is probably like the newest. I've never built one of these before. I call this one the ingot. It's kind of hidden in here, but it's basically it's a disc, and I wanted to have a single piece of metal that you could spin and also slide. And so, and you have to encode that information. So. This was probably the hardest one for me to make just because of the technical ability to put 2 encoders on it, one for lengthwise and one for the spinning. So that's a little bit like the overview of what all these instruments do. And finally, microphone. This is basically I wanted to have a microphone where because I'm using my hands and I'm only one person, I want to be able to use my voice. You always got your voice available to you. So you got Let me just change the track up here so you can hear it a little bit better. All right, so I put a different effect on each microphone. So I'm only using 4, there's 8 of them, but I'm only using 4. But they also act as MIDI controllers. So the harder I blow, the louder I speak. So you can hear there's a cymbal swell there. So I'm having it trigger some cymbals. As I'm screaming, I can have this like cymbal swell. So it's like ultimate black metal situation. All right, finally, to get the full effect from from the voice, I found that if you put piezos on your throat, this is something that the military uses when they're underwater, so they can talk. They actually strap a microphone onto their throat, so like Navy SEALs can like talk while they're underwater because you can't hear yourself talk underwater. So if you get it right on your throat, right on your trachea, and you push it really hard, you get this kind of like picks up the bass frequencies that I've found. You can just use it. So that is all the instruments. Technically, what this does is they're controllers. You can use controllers that are basically interfaces for synthesizers or software. Software, something like Ableton Live, you can basically send it MIDI information and it'll control its synths. That's what I'm doing. It's the same as a MIDI keyboard, you know, maybe like an APC or a push controller. Same kind of thing, I've just made it custom. The cool thing now that I feel like I'm doing is they've made it a lot easier to send these signals through a computer out to hardware synthesizers. Then you get like the full effect of like bass and the analog sound. So I've also got it going out to some Electron gear for some of the synths and drum machines. And technically, these are all open source. Like everything that's on here is either, I have made or ordered like little parts, 3D printed, and Arduino is like a Raspberry Pi Arduino is what's at the core. And so all this information, like this positional information, that pitch information coming off of linear encoders is going into an Arduino, which then takes that information and sends MIDI back to the computer. It's a really simple setup. That's it, technically. Machined on CNC machines and 3D printers. And it's really important for me that this stuff is open source so that people know that they can go and make this stuff on their own.